I've got Jamie from Big Dog, one of the sponsors of our broadcast here. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning. How are you tonight?
I'm very well. Now, you're from Big Dog Security.
That's correct. Yep.
Now, what does Big Dog Security do?
Big Dog Security, we are a Toowoomba-based company. We provide security services across Queensland in crowd control, events, and also certificate training.
Okay, so tell us about the training. Is it a Cert 3, 4?
That's it. We provide a Cert 2 and 3, which includes first aid.
Right.
Our training manager, Anthony Carlon, is the head of that. And he can be contacted on our Facebook page.
Okay, and whereabouts are you?
174 Margaret Street, Toowoomba, next to the Tats Hotel.
You just moved, did you? 174. Okay, so what happens? You do the Cert 2 or 3, and that enables you then to work in a hotel in security, or what does the qualifications do?
Cert 2 gives you a basic crowd control licence. The Certificate 3 is the add-ons from there. That gets you, to do static work, crowd control, anything in the...
So what's static work?
Static work is like mobile or stationary security in industrial and things like that.
Okay. Now, what about driving around at night and putting the paper in the door? Is that
patrol
what
work?
you do?
So we don't actually cover that at the moment. That market is pretty well covered.
Okay.
So we just predominantly do the stationary work and crowd control.
So how many students would you put through in a year or a month?
We've been running a course once a week since February, and about 8 on average.
So if people want to do that course, how can they contact you?
Contact us on 0406 699 741. Just ask for Anthony Carlon's contact details.
Okay, and how long does it take again to do?
So the process is you do a 6-day course.
Okay.
It's through SDS Training Company, and it's a 6-day certificate course, which then gives you the certificate to apply for a licence through Fair Trading. And
can you help people with jobs? Like, can you point them in the right direction?
Definitely, we do that. There is an opportunity to put a resume in with us, and our operational manager, Chris Fechner, goes through those resumes, and we're always looking for good guys. Now,
Darryl told me you've got a gym, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. We've got a Big Dog Training Institute. That's 122A Campbells Street.
Okay.
So that is a open to public gym. It's 24-hour access. It's $11.95 a week. We also use that for our training of our guards as well. So our Big Dog Security is high on continuous training for our guards, ever improve their operations, both with the legal side of things and legislation and things like that.
So how long's the company been going?
We're just closing in on 5 years now.
Okay, and you started it, did you?
Myself and Kurt, my business partner, and Max is also the 3 directors of the company.
That's right, I just got scared then because we got louder for some reason. Okay. So a big, bright future ahead for Big Dog, I'd imagine.
That's correct. Yep, we've in the last couple of years we've expanded on the sunny coast. We run quite a few venues up there with another operational manager up there.
And you're a registered training organisation as well.
No, we have a parent company that is SDS Training is our parent company.
Okay. And how much is it for a course?
Well, there's government funding available for those that are eligible, but a course is about $500 for a Cert 2, $900 for a Cert 3, but we do provide easy pay. Easy pay systems.
And there's plenty of jobs in the industry? There
is heaps of jobs in the industry. It's one of the Australia's fastest growing industries, so security is a wide range of different jobs, to monitoring CCTV, to crowd control, to patrol, static work. It is growing every day. The technology behind CCTV also is growing at a fast rate, so the security industry is trying to keep up with that.
Fantastic. Jamie, thanks for having a chat with us today here on Power FM, and also thanks for being part of this broadcast as well.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for having me.
That's right. That's Jamie from Big Dog Security. Contact and the phone number again?
The contact number is 0406 699 741.
Yeah, Jeff, we've been talking about rail all morning.
Yep.
Time now to
We're on track.
Yeah, we've been on track. We are on track. We're going to talk to someone who was actually here at the station and worked at the station for a long, long time. So, Bob, you worked here as a controller, is that correct?
That's correct.
He's not a fat controller, is he?
No. And Bob, what was your role here at the railway station?
I worked in the railway office opposite the Mill Tavern, and I started off as a junior in that office and worked my way up to the position of a control clerk, something after the style of an air traffic controller, only we didn't have the sophisticated equipment that the air traffic controllers had. We had to look after the trains and the range where they met one another, crossed one another, troubleshooters when there was derailments and other unfortunate incidents and that type of thing.
Bob, how did that communication happen? You said it wasn't as sophisticated as...
Yeah, we had...
how did you communicate with
we
the
had
trains?
a microphone in front of us and a panel in front of us with lots of keys, what they call keys. And if we wanted a particular station, we turned the key and there was a code that rang the phone at the station at the other end. And their incoming voice would come through the microphone and I'd give out instructions and information from my end, sort of thing. Yeah.
So, Bob, the signalling, the lights signalling, were you looking after that as well?
No, there was signalmen here and also station masters that looked after the signalling type of thing. Yeah.
Yep. So you would have been, I guess, Spring Bluff would have been one of your regular contacts.
Certainly, for sure. When we looked after that end right down as far as Woolcarack and near Ipswich, we had lots of trains, the old steam engines and the diesels coming up the range, and a lot of them struggled with the loads they had on. Yeah.
It's a pretty big climb up the range there.
Certainly is.
And I mean, you must have seen your fair share of dramas of...
yeah. And
does one stick out?
Yeah, nothing particular, but we had trains that got stuck mainly coming from Murphy's Creek into Holmes, a station called Holmes below Spring Bluff, and also coming into Spring Bluff. Yes, they caused us lots of headaches, and often we had to send either a steam engine or a diesel down from here to assist them through to Toowoomba.
Now, there were passenger services to Toowoomba, but was the majority of services right? What was it? Goods? Was it heavy goods?
Oh, there was an enormous amount of passenger traffic went through here. The interstate mail going to Sydney and coming back from Sydney. The train going to right out to Charleville, Cunnamulla and Quilpie. And also we had rail motors coming in from all the various branch lines every morning and going out of an afternoon.
Yes, well, I certainly remember the rail motor to Helidon, and then the bus up the range from Helidon.
That's true.
The little bullet rail motors, gorgeous little rail motors. Now, what about travelling north? We know that, it was Stanthorpe and Warwick and then out to Oakey. What about the northern lines? Were you servicing much traffic north?
No, we didn't look after the railway chaps in Brisbane looked after the service north, up to Rocky and Townsville and Cairns.
That's right, but what about through Oakey? Weren't there branch lines through Oakey as well?
Yeah, the branch lines out to Cecil Pines and out to Cooya.
Right, up to Cooya, that's right.
Yeah, up to Cooya,
yeah. And you were controlling all of that traffic?
Yeah, we looked after that, yes, yeah.
And coming back to the railway station here now, 150 years, what's changed for you? Yes, there is no steam.
Yeah, no steam from the early 70s. The absence of railway traffic apart from the coal trains and an occasional train hauling grain from the southwest or out on the Millmerran line.
And these days, Bob, is that all automated now? All of that signalling?
Yeah, all the signalling is all automated.
Automated, yeah.
Before I finished in the mid-90s, we were just getting computerised signalling here. I handled a little bit of that for a year or so before I finished work.
Bob, one final question. What's your favourite memory here? On the station, the dining room.
Yeah,
the people?
Yeah, the dining room, the refreshment room ladies that worked in there did a wonderful job looking after the public, particularly on the interstate trains and the rail motors and that ran in the area. Oftentimes you'd get the mail trains running late and they'd arrive at the same time, and the passengers only had roughly half an hour to have their meal. They had to race off, have their meal, but the ladies in the refreshment rooms looked after them very well, made sure they had their meal.
And Bob, it was silver service and QR cutlery, yeah?
Yeah, QR cutlery, yes. We often had railway functions in there for various activities and that, and the ladies again did a wonderful job there. It's something that the younger generation wouldn't understand.
Yeah, couldn't comprehend.
Yeah, I reckon these particular days like today should be held at least every year to acquaint the public, what the railways are about.
To remind the people and show young people.
And all the history of the railways in this area.
Yeah. Bob, it's been great chatting with you today.
Yeah.
Bob, who was here, who was working the signals all those years ago, and back today for the 150th anniversary of Steam through Toowoomba, right here on Power FM. And right now I've got with me John Campbell. Now, many people would be familiar with Campbells News Agency. They've been around in Toowoomba forever and ever. And John, you've got a really significant and pretty well-established lead back into what happened on the railway here and newspapers that came from Brisbane. Can you tell us that story, John?
Yeah, well, that's correct. My grandfather, Albert Hammond, he owned a news agency just across the road here at the very end of Station Street. Also incorporated a skating rink in that business.
Oh, wow.
He had a stall on the railway here for many years, and his wife, Emily, was here in, I think it was around 1924, selling papers. She was expecting their second child, and she collapsed at the newspaper on the platform and died.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Which was a great shock.
Great tragedy.
Yeah.
John, the newspapers were coming up from Brisbane at this time?
Yeah, well, my grandfather had the rights to the Courier Mail for all of Toowoomba in those days. He would board the train, I'm pretty sure it was at Helidon, and he would hand wrap the papers coming up the range, because it took, I think, close to an hour to come from Helidon to Toowoomba.
Yep.
He would hand wrap those papers, and when he got to Toowoomba station, there would be a series of people here with horses and carts and drays and what have you, and they would deliver his papers for him. And I believe he paid those guys with tins of tobacco to do those jobs.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People don't realise that Toowoomba is a rail hub. And this is just one little part of it. All of those newspapers, all the Courier Mail coming out of Bowen Hills, coming up on the train from Brisbane, and then being distributed right here, right from the railway station.
Well, that's right. I believe during the war years, he would sell you a Courier Mail for twopence, and you could bring that paper back later in the day and he'd buy it back for a penny. And he would then on-sell that paper to the troops that came through in the troop trains.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were very, very hungry for any sort of news.
Any news,
yeah.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. And John, was there a concession here on the station selling papers as well?
Yeah, he had a stall.
Yep.
I think it was located somewhere on the platform.
Yep.
That actually sold papers.
John, I remember the newspapers, the Courier Mail, being sold out of little red. They were like cages, and you put your money in and you opened up the front of it, and that's how you got your Courier Mail.
Yeah, well, they were termed honour boxes.
Yep.
In the early days, they didn't have a door. You dropped your money in and you took a paper.
Yeah.
But there were all those people who dropped their money in and took two or three, or they'd drop no money in and take the paper.
Take two or three.
Or take the lot, or they'd break into the box and take the money and the papers or whatever.
And John, with the papers here in Toowoomba coming through, were you meeting trains? Were you meeting the west, the westbound trains to sell papers to those people coming through?
Well, he would have. His business would have been around arrivals and departures of trains.
Yes, yeah, and he would have known that timetable.
He would have known it backwards. Yeah,
yeah.
I can recall coming here to collect papers for my dad's business. And of course, you just couldn't walk onto the platform. You had to pay.
Yes.
You had to buy a ticket to get onto the platform.
Yeah.
And also going to the goods shed to pick up papers and magazines that come from far and wide.
And isn't that one of the sounds of the city? And I don't think young people these days would appreciate, the paper sellers on street corners and paper telly, city final.
Well, that's right. Yeah, guys standing on traffic islands selling papers to people in cars.
Yep.
I tell the story of my grandfather in Sydney. He had a semaphore. He could signal ships at sea from his house. And my dad went to war on the Queen Mary. And, he went on the Queen Elizabeth. And as they sailed down the coast, my grandfather sent a signal to the commander of the ship, and my father was summoned to the bridge, and there was a message there from his dad welcoming him, wishing him well in war.
In war, yeah.
And you tell young people these days, and they hold up their phone and say, "Why didn't he use his phone?"
His phone, yeah. Yep.
It's just crazy.
John, it's been great chatting with you this afternoon and reminiscing over those stories of how the newspapers, the Courier Mail, coming up from the printery in Brisbane at Bowen Hills, up on the train, getting folded as it went up the hill towards Toowoomba and then being distributed to all points. Thanks very much for joining us here today on Power FM.
No trouble.
And I've got another guest here on the panel this afternoon. John, you started here as a 15-year-old at the Toowoomba Railway Station.
Yes, that's right. I started at 15 straight from school. I actually worked in the trains room where Bob worked. We had a Bob on before. And I started there, and then I worked in the various roles in the admin office. I ended up coming down to the Toowoomba station and doing rosters and paperwork. I've worked in Brisbane in the audit and came back to Toowoomba doing rosters, and then I finished my career in the payroll.
And John, what was the station like through your years? Was it busy?
Very, very busy, because as Bob said earlier, we had passenger trains running twice a week to Sydney through Wollongara. You had the Dirranbandi Mail, you had the Westlander going to Charleville, Cunnamulla, Quilpie, you had rail matters running to Brisbane, you had rail matters running to Dalby and Roma. Everywhere we had a lot of boarding school students from all the boarding schools around town. The guy that was ticket officer here, you only ever saw him 3 times a year, because he used to handle all the bookings for the children going on back on the trains. He'd come in and ask me who I had with him, so you made sure you had the right staff to do all the bookings.
Yep.
There was the rail matters. We had things that carted stuff that people wouldn't realise. Now there were crates of chooks.
Yep, Cream used to come through, didn't it?
Well,
Cream
I don't remember them. That was pre-me, and when they were running out to the Crow's Nest line, and as Bob said, they had the Cecil Plain branch off Oakey.
Yep.
What he didn't say, Bob admitted to say, was Dalby had 5 branch lines. Glen Morgan, Bell. Then you had the Clifton, and it was on the main line. You had Aldera branches out here. Back in those days, there was what they call RM64, a little red rail motor that used to run out to Pittsworth, Millmerran.
Yes, and the kids used to come into school on those,
And they had down the end of the shed here, the infrastructure shed, there was a turntable. There was just a whole host of things like that.
And John, at all hours of the day and night, some of those trains were coming through very late at night too, weren't they?
Well, as Bob said, with the refreshment rooms, with the manageress was Dulcie Bartoski, and they, as she said, used to say, they were never sure if the trains ran late, and they'd be on standby and they'd get called. And in those days, the refreshment room girls, they used to live up on top of the refreshment rooms.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they had their own resident ghost.
Many stories.
But the station was a really busy place. It was just a hive of activity all of the time.
Now, we've talked about passengers coming through. What about goods? What were the main goods coming through Toowoomba?
Well, in those days, that side of things were divided up into the parcels office, which is no longer there, and of course that handled the smaller loading, and over the other side of the track was the freight terminal, which handled with the bigger loading. And
what was coming through the freight terminal? Everything.
You name it, everything.
What about produce going to Brisbane?
Yeah, well, obviously you had the grain, livestock.
And yards? Were there yards here as well?
Well, behind where we are in this platform here, that was the only yards there was. It was the Toowoomba yards.
Yeah.
And that was the only shunning yards. That was pre the marshalling yards at Willaboon.
Right. Okay. So it really was a busy little place here.
That's right. And in those days, the structure was Toowoomba we were the general manager Southwest Division. It went to Wollongara in the south, Dirranbandi in the southwest, Charleville, Cunnamulla in the far west. So that was the general manager's office. Then you had what they called a district superintendent's office at Warwick and one at Roma. When the steam came through, the DS's office at Warwick disappeared.
Yeah. What about the coming of the diesel, John? What do you remember most about that?
Well, I came in on the job on the tail end of the steam.
Yeah.
When the only ones that were steam engines running around at that time were in the shunning yard here, and the rest was diesel. But I've actually been through the 3 years steam, diesel and electric.
And electric now, yeah. And of course the line is just as important now as it was then, but this time not so much for passengers, obviously,
No,
but for coal. There's a lot of coal going down,
right, yeah.
and grain going down as well too.
And the other thing that people have forgotten is in the days gone by, when I first started here, we used to have a railway ball in the old Toowoomba show, in the old tin pavilion at the showgrounds. And a guy by the name of Johnny Gilliman, John White, and there was another guy, Maxie Estlin, was the truck driver. They used to organise it every year. And going back to the 70s, and Jono would have had a 1,200 used to turn up in the middle of a Toowoomba winter. 1,200 people in the old tin shed at the showgrounds with a wait list of 800.
Oh, wow.
And people would have forgotten that.
John, one story before we finish up. Now, I've heard that some of those trains coming through in winter, from the refreshment rooms you could hire like a water bottle, a tin water bottle or something to keep your feet warm.
Well, that's possibly right.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that one. But
yeah, I mean, they weren't air conditioned, some of those carriages.
Well, my dad used to say with the old wooden carriages, and he used to travel Charleville back in the war years, and he used to tell me that his dad was only a small person like myself, and they'd sleep in the carriage racks to get somewhere to sleep.
Up above the chair.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
John, it's been great chatting and reminiscing about old times here, and thanks very much for popping by. Been a lot of talk around here, a lot of reminiscing, a lot of guys who know a lot about steam, and they're just having a ball.
That's it.
So thanks very much. Thanks, John.
Now, we've got a train out the back that is sitting there waiting to go back home.
Yep.
But someone from the group that owns that train is with me at the moment, Bob Amos. Hello, Bob. Welcome along to Power FM.
G'day, Jeff, isn't it?
Yes, it is, both of us.
Yeah, two Jeffs.
Yes, there's
That's
an
easy.
echo around here, Jeff.
That makes it easy.
Now, you're from the Southern Downs Steam Railway, is that
That's
right?
correct, the Southern Downs Steam Railway.
What do you do? What do they do?
We are a volunteer group, totally run by volunteers. And the original people that started in 1995 rescued our C-17 steam engine, which was in a museum at Chinchilla. It was a museum piece at Chinchilla.
Okay.
They negotiated to buy it, which they did, transported it by road back to Warwick, and a group of dedicated volunteers took nearly 10 years to strip that down and fully restore it.
So how long has it been running then?
It's been running since Australia Day. 2009 was its first commercial run with paid passengers.
And you restored carriages to go with it?
Yep. At the time it started, they got the boiler. Unfortunately, was ruined. Was rusted out, no good. And we did get. They got a $300,000 Commonwealth Government grant, which paid for a new boiler, which was built, I think, in the railway workshops in Ipswich.
Oh, cool.
Okay, yeah.
So that was a major contribution from the government, which was good. But apart from that, it's all been volunteer work. They acquired 2 old wooden suburban carriages from Brisbane. And at that stage they had a Work for the Dole program going, so they had a skilled carpenter employed, and with the Work for the Dole people, they stripped those carriages down and restored them. And that's how the thing started. On Australia Day 2009, the
Juice and stock had to change to get onto the Queensland train.
Exactly, and the main line, the line from Brisbane to Sydney, was via Toowoomba, Warwick, down to Wollongara, park the train on one side of the station, get everything out on the other side, and then you've got Tenterfield, Glen Innes, Armidale,
through to
so on
Sydney.
down to Sydney.
Yeah.
So how long did that take to transport everything across?
Oh,
Hours?
hours. Well, I think some of the goods, I think they used to actually change the bogies. They used to jack the freight wagons up and change the bogies.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
quicker than changing
Quicker
all
than changing the cargo over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how much coal does it take to get up here from where you came from today?
Oh, that's a good question. We can get up here and back on 1 tender load. Yeah. If we go out to Gundawindi, which we do, we actually cover 500 kilometres of track.
Yeah.
We've got. I should tell listeners, we run on the main line, obviously.
Yes.
And that's the unusual thing. Most vintage trains around the country run on a little bit of track that they own, a bit of disused track. You take the West Coast Railway in Tasmania, Zigzag when it's running, Puffing Billy, of course, in Melbourne, Gympie that's not running at the moment, but again, they own the track and they've got to maintain it. We run on the Queensland Rail Network.
And Bob, what about you coal? You did the coal in one trip. What about the water? Did you have to tender
No,
along the way?
we pick up water. We got a watering point in Clifton, so we stopped in Clifton, which is about the halfway point between here and Warwick. So we have to hold up the traffic. We run a fire hose across the road, and sometimes the volunteer fire service are very kind. They bring a wagon down. they'll meet us at Wallangarra, at Stanthorpe with a wagon and pump some water on for us.
Yeah, because they would have been all dismantled.
All the infrastructure's gone. There used to be water towers and things and coaling points everywhere. They're all gone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's been wonderful having a chat and an insight into what you're doing.
Yep.
How long have you been associated with the association?
I've been working with them for about 8 or 9 years, 8 years now. Yeah, basically since they started. We, as I said, we've got this access to this track, so we run to Wallangarra, which is an all-day trip, at least about 7 or 8 times a year.
How can people contact you if they want to go on one of these trips?
They simply ring 4661 9788.
4661.
4661 9788. We'll get our booking officer. There are trips occasionally to Gundawinny. That's a 3-day trip.
Yeah.
We come to Toowoomba. Our next trip to Toowoomba will be Mother's Day, the 14th of May.
Okay.
Then we come up for the Carnival of Flowers. And of course we come especially to support this wonderful event here today.
Absolutely. It's a pity we didn't get a chance to go on the train.
Yeah, I would have loved to.
So would I.
Yeah, maybe a private trip one day. We'll talk to Bob off mic.
Yeah.
Talk to Bob. We do private trips. Just show us the colours of your money. We'll do anything you like. You name it, we'll do it.
As long as I can stoke the coal.
You could do that.
No, I'll watch. Thanks.
We've done a couple of weddings.
Is that right?
We've done a couple of weddings. We had one wedding where they chartered the whole train. The bride got on in Warwick, the guests assembled at Clifton, and they had the ceremony at Clifton, and they all boarded the train in and came on here and had the reception here.
Oh, wonderful.
We do murder mystery nights. We could do one on a train.
On a train, yeah. Orient Express. There we go.
Exactly.
There we go.
It's a deal. Talk to us. Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
do you have a
guys.
website?
We do, yes. Warwick, just to Southern Downstream Railway.
Okay, so if you Google that, you'll find all the
you'll find
details
us,
and you can book your own private little trip.
Sounds great.
You can book online, yep.
Thanks, Bob.
You're
Southern Downs Steam Railway. When are you going back?
We're leaving about 2:30.
Okay.
We've got a group travelling with us, a special rail travel group that have come up from Brisbane on the train to come up this morning, steam train. They're transferring to us now, I know, because I've just moved all their luggage. And
I thought you were looking a little bit.
I do, I'm a little bit, yeah. And then they're going to stay the night in Warwick, and tomorrow they're doing the trip down to Wallangarra with us, and then going by bus, I think, I think Armadale or something.
Okay,
Wow.
Yeah.
excellent.
Good.
Thanks, Bob, once again for having a chat. This is Power FM simulcast with Power TV Australia from the Festival of Rail. One of the many static displays here is from Downstream as opposed to Southern Downstream.
That's
so
right.
Downstream is situated here at Drayton. We have Robert Ketton from Downstream with us.
Hello,
Welcome.
how are you?
Very well, thanks. Now, what's your position in the club?
Well, I'm the marketing guru.
Okay.
Yep.
Give him a card, someone. I'm serious. There you go, you can have a card.
This is reversed. I now have to promote you rather than the other way around. Is that right?
Something like that.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so tell us all about Downstream. How many, is it train sets?
Now, train sets are owned by little boys.
Okay.
We have grown-up trains, more or less. No, we have 3 major pieces of rolling stock. We have a rail motor, which will be on the line by about December. It came up from Tasmania.
Okay.
And we have a steam locomotive number 106, which we're in the process of restoring. It's important from a heritage point of view because it was the last locomotive built here at the Toowoomba foundry.
Oh, okay.
And it took part in the opening of what was known as the Drayton Deviation, which is the direct link between Toowoomba and Drayton. When the railway came up here in 1864, it used to go out west around Gowrie Mountain and join with the Warwick line at Wairima.
Oh,
and
really?
It took them 50 years to persuade the government to have a direct link from Toowoomba to Drayton. So that locomotive helped open that line, which is why we think it should be in Toowoomba.
Absolutely.
And why it's important to preserve it.
What about your carriages? Your sets of carriages?
Yes, we've
Is
got
that
sets of
right?
carriages.
Did I say that right?
Rolling stock?
Rolling stock, that's a far more technical term. Well done. No, what this is about is I'm not allowed to say that
Right.
we've got the old Sunlander. Because Queensland Rail get upset.
Do they?
Yes. So we have bought the M-class carriages, which happen to be the old Sunlander.
I was going to say, they're similar to the old Sunliner ones, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm sure that's the old Sunlander.
And we have sleeping cars. We have dining cars, and what we're hoping to do is to run up to Stanthorpe, because at Stanthorpe there are wineries, and the idea is that you will take a lightning trip up there, anything up to 35 kilometres an hour we'll be going at.
Full tilt.
And you'll be able to have a leisurely tour up there, sleep overnight on the train,
Cool.
and then have a tour of the wineries, come back, and again sleep on the train, and then on Sunday, having sobered up, you can come back down the line and not worry about the breathalyzer.
No.
So that's the idea behind.
And how far are they happening at the moment, or how far away are they?
They're a little way away, largely because of some problems with getting accreditation to go on the main line.
Oh, okay, but that's okay. That's fine
That's
because I know.
it's happening. I know, and
Yeah.
I know you've got something happening for Mother's Day too at Downstream.
We have. That's a very popular item. We start at 9 o'clock. We have a magnificent breakfast, and it's $25 for breakfast and half price for children. And we have some music and a bush poet, and it's a good time. That's how we make our living through the catering that we do. So at this very moment, the people who came up from Brisbane with Scott McGregor and his rail tours, they're out at Downstream enjoying lunch.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah.
Now, Robert, you've got a very special car out there. You've got one that's been painted by an Aboriginal artist, haven't you? It's quite vivid. It's a really vivid experience going into that rail car. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I certainly can. It's called the Dreamtime Journey Coach, and the reason why we did it was we wanted to honour the contribution that Aborigines had made to the building of the railway, which seems singularly appropriate today when we're celebrating 150 years. They were asked to make camp and do some of the general duties work around the railway. And so we wanted to honour that, and we asked a number of local Aboriginal artists if they would paint the interior of a carriage. Well, they came and they looked and they said, oh, it's a very big job. But fortunately, at that stage, we used to use prisoners from Westbrook.
Yes,
and one of the
They're all gone now. So.
Yes, they're all gone now. But one of the prisoners, a delightful man, said, I'll do it for you. And he has done an absolutely fantastic job of decorating the inside of that carriage. People have come from literally all over the world. We had a travel writer from New York come and say, look, I've seen... he called it First Nation work on the sides of railway trains and on locomotives, but I've never ever seen what he described as an art gallery on wheels. So it really is a very special coach.
Great talking point too. Now you have a special affinity with the rail. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, if I start talking in native language, like I'm a Geordie, which means I come from Newcastle on Tyne.
I thought you were going to break into an AC/DC song there.
Eric Burton and the Animals.
That's
on
right,
Newcastle.
that's right.
Yeah.
It's more or less unintelligible to anybody who wasn't born there. But it is the home of railways, in that it's probably its most famous son was George Stephenson, and he had this locomotive called the Rocket, which was one of the first successful railway locomotives. But it is steeped in rail
history.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And when I was a boy of about 9, I had an ideal granddad. He used to run me in his car to a railway embankment. I don't know what occupational health and safety would make of this, but we used to scramble up the bank, and he used to take out this great big gold pocket watch, and he'll say, she's here in 3 minutes. And, the ground would just start to tremble, and there'd be this magnificent sound of this huge steam locomotive coming roaring towards him, and this little boy looking up and seeing these gorgeous maroon coaches and people inside having lunch or whatever, and sometimes they would wave at the little boy. And from then on, I was absolutely hooked on trains.
Absolutely hooked on rail.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we get in touch with Downstream?
Well, you can go to our website.
Okay, and that is all the W's?
Downstream. Just put Downstream into your Google search engine, and you'll end up at our website.
Okay, so you're open certain days of the week?
Yes, we're open on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays.
And what can people expect when they go out there?
They can expect a tour.
Cool.
And they can also expect to be harassed into joining us. And so what we've got about 150 members.
Is that right? Okay.
Of which probably about 40, 45 are active. We offer such a wide range of volunteer opportunities, from our garden to our catering to engineering to public relations. There's all sorts of things that people can do. So people have been very cruel and say we're running an old men's shed, but really we are
Brothers with train sets.
with train sets, exactly so. So we'd love to see you out there, and we'd love to see you join.
And Jeff and Robert, it is gorgeous. The gardens out there are a real credit to the organisation, and it's not just the locomotives. There's a whole variety of rolling stock and carriages that you've got out there to look at. The little rail motor is gorgeous. And you know, for those people that used to load sheep or used to send sheep to market, you've got N-class. Is it N-class?
Yeah, well, we've got those sheep wagons. I've never heard a farmer say, "Oh, I hope I never see another one of those from loading sheep." But yes, and we've got an Anzac carriage, which is a carriage which commemorates the railways at war, basically. And some fascinating local history.
Well, certainly having the engine that was the last to be built in the Toowoomba foundry is a direct link to both steam and unfortunately the Toowoomba foundry, which is no longer here.
I might finish with a little story as we're in the precinct of the railway station here. One of the groups of visitors we get are the ladies who used to work in the railway refreshment rooms here in Toowoomba. And I don't suppose listeners would realise that they had dormitory accommodation, because a lot of the trains came in at night, and they had a matron. And of course these were normal young women, so they used to sneak out of the windows up there, across the railway.
I know where this is going.
Across the railway bridge, off to the dance, and they'd arrive back just in time to greet the train. And the other story they told me was, if there was anybody rude to them in the refreshment room, they would fill their cup of tea at the last minute, right to the brim with scalding tea, and the poor person had to run down the platform burning their thumb as the tea spilled. So be nice to the ladies.
Speaking of which, are there refreshments out there?
Yes, there are, but you have to book in advance for the refreshments.
Okay, all right. Now, Downstream, just Google that and you can pop down and become a member, and an active member. So, Bob, thanks for having a chat.
A pleasure.
Robert, good on you. Thanks
Robert, sorry, yes.
That's all right.
Thanks very much, Robert.